22. What is Inside? By Nathan Hine. Chapter 1. The room was a velvet-lined secret, cloaked in a darkness so profound it felt like an embrace. Only a few scattered lamps, their light filtered through crimson shades, bled a soft, sensual glow-off ruby that painted Henry and Missy in shades of warm amber and deep shadow. They swayed in the heart of this intimate twilight, not to any external melody, but to a rhythm far more ancient and personal. There was no music, just the intimate symphony of their own creation, the soft, rhythmic scrape of their feet across the floor, perfectly in sync, the gentle ebb and flow of their shared breath, a silent duet, and the quickening thrum of their heartbeats, a primal drum urging them closer still. It was a silent soundtrack of pure presence, the unheard rhythmic noise to their entwined souls. They danced slowly, a languid, unhurried waltz of two bodies in perfect unison, their movements almost reverent. Each step was a quiet communion, each turn an unspoken promise. Henry Noble, with his ginger beard vibrant flame against his shirt chest, and his shoulder-length hair dappled with the rare lines of white that made him resemble a younger Santa Claus before the full winter took hold, guided Missy gently. His wire-rimmed glasses caught the faint light, framing blue eyes that held an ocean of quiet devotion and affection. Missy, a vision in the crimson wash, her dark hair a shadowy curtain, her full lips parted slightly in an almost imperceptible smile, met his gaze with the greenest eyes he'd ever known, emeralds polished by the night reflecting the dim red light of the room. Inch by deliberate inch, they drifted across the room, leaving the faint light of the lamps behind, drawn by the deeper shadows that cradled the large, inviting bed in the very center. It was a silent pilgrimage, a shared understanding blooming between them that this dance was merely the prelude, the gently unfurling of a story already known yet ever new. The air around them thickened with anticipation, a palpable hum that vibrated between their pressed bodies. When their journey finally concluded at the edge of the vast mattress, the dance dissolved into a new, more tender ritual. Fingers, nimble and knowing, sought out fastenings. Kisses punctuated the quiet rustle of fabric, light and fleeting at first, then deeper, more consuming, as shirts were untucked and zippers descended. His ginger beard brushed her collarbone as he kissed the hollow of her throat. Her dark hair cascaded over his shoulders as she helped him shed his shirt. Each piece of clothing shed was a layer of separation peeled away, revealing not just skin but the vulnerability beneath, met with adoration. Garments slipped to the floor like discarded husks, not in haste, but with the quiet reverence offsetting the mundane. At last, skin met skin, a familiar and cherished contact, as they lay down together in the bed. They had done this countless times before, their bodies mapping each other's terrain with practiced ease. But tonight, it was different. It was somehow more intimate, a revelation rather than a repetition. They lay together, their bodies a landscape of familiar comfort and thrilling anticipation. Tonight, it was slower. Yes, it was slower, significantly so, more controlled. Each touch was prolonged to enhance its contact, each caress a brushstroke on a canvas of profound connection that it was a deliberate exploration rather than an urgent claiming. This wasn't merely two people seeking the familiar comfort of pleasure. There was a palpable desire for something more, something that transcended the physical. It was as if their souls, not just their bodies, were reaching out, yearning to meet on a spiritual plane. Henry paused and searched around for a few moments. Missy questioned, "What's the matter? Why did you stop?" He replied, "Where's the condom? I'm not even sure Frank gave me one. You know how he is about making sure everybody uses one." He had to think for a moment, but he couldn't really remember even seeing Frank before he was in the room with her like he had every time before. Missy broke his thought as she spoke up with a tone of certainty, and her eyes told the same story. "I don't care about the condom. I want you. I need you. All of you with no barrier in between us." Henry could only say one thing to her in questioning confidence. "As you wish, madam." Any other time before Henry would disagree with this and not proceed without one usually. But there was something different in the air tonight. Their gazes locked, not in passion alone, but in a recognition of something ancient and pure, a language spoken without words, understood without effort. In their intertwined embrace, the world outside dissolved. The rhythm built, not in a feverish rush, but in a rising tide, each wave pulling them deeper into the other's essence. It was a journey of mutual discovery, a surrender not to instinct, but to an overwhelming tenderness that pulsed beneath every sensation. There was only the low red light, the whisper of their breath, and the beat of two hearts merging into one. When their bodies finally reached their climaxes, it was not an explosion but a magnificent, all-encompassing wave of shared ecstasy that washed over them both, the most profound either had ever experienced. As the aftershocks faded, a profound quiet settled. They were still Henry and Missy, undeniably themselves, yet something felt new, irrevocably shifted. A subtle transformation had occurred. A deeper bond was forged in the crucible of their shared, intimate vulnerability. It was a perfect, unblemished moment, a feeling of utter completion, as if every missing piece of their individual selves had finally found its home in the other. They lay together, tangled limbs, sweat-damp skin, and minds quieted by the sheer depth of their connection. There was no need for words, no need for movement. In that moment, in each other's arms, they were perfectly complete, two halves making a whole that had finally found its true, undeniable center. And there, bathed in the lingering red glow, they drifted into an essentiality-content sleep. Chapter 2. The cool, synthetic silk of the sheets under Henry's bare arm was the first thing he registered as he surfaced from a sleep he wasn't sure he had. The lingering warmth beside him, a soft, even breath against his shoulder, confirmed Missy's presence. He opened Heise's, expecting the familiar crimson glow of the red-lit room they'd danced and made love in just mere hours before. But this isn't what he was sitting in front of his eyes. Instead, there was an abyss. Darkness, absolute and consuming, stretched in every direction, a void so profound it felt like a physical pressure. The red light, the sensual shadows, the very walls of their temporary haven, all gone. Only Missy's naked body, curled into him, her face serene in sleep, seemed real in this unsettling nothingness. He looked down at her, a knot forming in his stomach. What is this? Where are we? Henry wondered as he stared at the endless, nothing going in all directions around the bed. Then, in the impossibly distant blackness, a pinprick of light shimmered. It was small, no bigger than a distant star, but it pulsed with an undeniable, almost magnetic allure. Assalant, primal command seemed to resonate within Henry, urging him to get up, to walk towards it. Carefully, he disentangled himself from Missy, his bare feet meeting no floor, only more void. He stood, exposed and vulnerable, the chilling emptiness pressing in. The light called to him again, a siren song for his very soul. He took a step, then another, drawn forward despite the escalating unease. With each stride, the space behind him rippled, and the bed, with Missy still sleeping peacefully on it, dissolved into the darkness as if it had never been. The light ahead, meanwhile, blossomed, growing brighter and more expansive. As he walked, the light resolved into a scene, a tableau playing out within its expanding glow. It was his apartment, grimly familiar. He was there, or rather, a Henry was there, slumped on his worn couch. A half-empty bottle of whiskey glinted on the coffee table beside a sleek, black box. His hand, shaking slightly, held a funeral pamphlet, the face off a young soldier, a comrade from Iraq, staring up from it. The name on the pamphlet, Specialist Jerome Marsh, was etched into Henry's memory. The vision of Henry, his face haggard and shadowed, drained the last of the whiskey, the empty bottle clattering violently as he threw it onto the floor, where it shattered, sending shards off glass skittering across the garbage-filled floor. With a sigh that sounded like the last gasp of hope, he picked up a handgun. The dull glint of metal was sickeningly bright in the dim apartment despite its black color. He pushed the safety off with a click that echoed in the silent vision. His eyes returned to Jerome's picture one last time, a tear tracing a path through the grime on his cheek. Slowly, deliberately, he raised the gun to his head. The scene felt unnervingly familiar to the naked Henry standing and watching. A cold dread seeped into his bones. This wasn't just a vision, it was a memory. This had actually happened. Somehow had forgotten about it. But how? Something like this, he was sure he could remember. The vision of Henry's lips twitched. He looked directly at the invisible boundary between his world and Henry's. "Join me, Henry," he rasped, his voice raw with despair, yet oddly inviting. Henry knew that saying. It was something Jerome told him on his first night when he arrived in Iraq. A slow, chilling smile spread across his face, devoid of mirth, full of a terrible peace. His finger began to apply pressure on the trigger. But before the shot could ring out, a seismic crash ripped through the apartment. The front door splintered inward, torn from its frame, and a blinding shaft of light pierced the gloom, silhouetting a figure. The vision of Henry's head snapped up, his eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and a flicker of wonder. "Missy," he breathed, the name a question, a plea, and a hope. She was there, but she was clothed in another vision. She was a whirlwind of motion, rushing across the room, her eyes locked on the vision of Henry. Before the vision could react, she lunged, tearing the gun from his grasp and sending it skittering across the floor. Then, she pulled him into a fierce, desperate embrace, her arms tightening around him as if to hold him together. There was a blinding flash of light, so intense it burned away the apartment, the gun, the broken bottle, and the pamphlet. When it faded, the visions, Henry and Missy, were gone. The naked Henry, watching from the void, felt a violent wrench. The ground beneath him, or what felt like it, gave way, and he was falling. Not through a void this time, but a tunnel, a swirling vortex of energy and color. All around him, moments from his life flickered into existence like a movie montage. His childhood with his brother, his first girlfriend and their first kiss, the grit of sand in Iraq, the camaraderie, the terror, the day Marsh died, the numb return home, his marriage and its downfall, his children and when they were taken away from him, the first meeting with Missy in a dirty alley, their relationship and how it grew, their shared laughter and the feel of her skin. Happiness, sorrow, terror, love, all streamed past in a dizzying, overwhelming display. Then, as suddenly as it began, the fall stopped. He hung suspended in the tunnel, the memories fading, replaced by a single, pulsing word that flickered before him, just long enough for him to read it. Belphegor, a shadow detached itself from the tunnel walls, coalescing into a creature, something out of ancient tales of horror. It was formless yet defined, a swirling miasma of darkness and grasping tendrils, eyes that burned with infernal light. It wrapped itself around Henry, not crushing, but enveloping. He couldn't scream, couldn't even summon a single thought of resistance. It seeped into him, through his skin, through his very pores, absorbing, becoming one with him. A cold, alien power pulsed within his veins, a consciousness not his own stirring to life. With a final, violent push, Henry was propelled through the end of the tunnel, which now blazed with a large fire, flashing and morphing through every conceivable color. Crimson, sapphire, emerald, gold. A kaleidoscopic inferno